afternoon, everyone. I think we are like 3 minutes late after 12. But after you to you all, thank you so much for joining us. This will be our first webinar for the Undergraduate School of Business. So I will be hosting you. My name is Virendra Mchoki. I am the General Manager here at Genesis, the Undergraduate Business School. So I oversee the portfolios of BBA as well as the higher certificate. Previous background, I've been a program manager at another institution, which was called PSM Institution. I was also overseeing accreditation as well as professional programs. That's my background. I previously started as an accreditation officer, dealing with accreditations of my programs. That's it from my side in terms of background. Just to introduce you to our topic of today, it's all about the recession. And as you all know that currently we are hiked with high interest rates. And then the question is, how much my debt during this time? So high inflation rates, high interest rates and high repo rates that are currently going on. So the tip of this webinar is to equip you with cutting-edge tools that will provide you insight on how to navigate challenges around your debt. So just to introduce Genesis to you guys, Genesis is a private higher education which was founded in 1998. Operates in South Africa, Nigeria, the recently established offices in USA, as well as Kenya. Because of their global presence, we are operating in the continent, which is Africa, Asia, as well as America. So, just as it is a differentiator, it goes beyond, the intellectual acumen or intelligence. All that in terms of, higher education, they want to tap into intellectual acumen or intellectual intelligence. But the is we go beyond that. We get, emotional intelligence, we want to get spiritual intelligence, where we develop an all-rounder, we develop a structured human being. So that's the Genesis, and that's our differentiator here. As the undergraduate business school, we offer programs which are accredited by the Council of Education, as well as registered through the National Qualification Framework, which is my for programs which range from your higher certificate in business management, as well as your business administration, and they also have specialization. The specialization is in management for both the higher certificate business management as well as for the Bachelor of Business Administration. So without further ado, I will introduce you to our panelists. However, we have to make an apologies for ending couldn't join us today due to some urgent work that he needed to do with Investec at Cape Town. But I will introduce you to our panelists which have joined us, which is Stephen Ravena, as well as Karutin Nambo. And I will ask our esteemed guest to introduce themselves. We'll develop from Investec, who's coming in from the Wealth Management from Investec. Develop over to you.
Sure. Thank you, Jan. All right, perfect. Also, from the introduction, something I want to do. In terms of my background, I'm a manager. I'm the investing part in investments. So ultimately, I deal with structuring investments for ultra high net worth individuals. I've also got, obviously, other experiences which deal in tech, being in software development, as well as then some M&A transacting for various industry transactions. So yeah, that's who I am in a nutshell.
No, thank you, Robert. Thank you, Tirilo. Thank you for that very brief introduction of yourself. I think it will contribute more further in our discussion around debt management with your investment, insight and skills. So, with that being said, I would also like to allow Carrington Mulambo to introduce himself.
Okay, thank you, Leander. Thank you very much. Yeah, my name is Carrington Mulambo. I'm a SAP SAP finance analyst. So my working background, I've worked as a SAP consultant at ShopRite and Checkers. That's where I'm working as of now. And I also have a background in lecturing. I was lecturing at my previous institute, which is Pearson Institute. I was lecturing accounting and economics. And then I moved into SAP. That's where I'm currently working. That's me in a nutshell. Thank you.
No, thank you so much, Carrington Mulambo. It's lovely to have you. It's lovely to have you from both sides, actually, from the academia side as well as from the industry side in terms of practice. So at least you would have an all-rounder when it comes to our discussion. You can be able to apply the theory as well as with the practical element of how it's being done in the industry. So, colleagues, with that being said, I think maybe as an opener, we have seen many of South Africans are feeling the pinch, of the high repo rates that are constantly growing. I think it was supposed to be its fourth time around about in July. And many of those individuals might have lost their available assets, such as houses, cars, and it has a huge impact in terms of the nation when it comes to the high, scale in terms of the nation scale when it comes to economic growth, that it has an impact on, And I was reading one of the articles from Reuters. I think it was on the 15th of June, where they were talking about the expected in terms of the estimated economic growth within the South African economy, where they were estimating it to grow at the merely 0.3%. Imagine that, which has various impacts, colleagues. It could be impacts that are related to the load shedding that we're seeing, impact that are related to unemployment rates, high interest rates. But specifically for this conversation, I think we'll be looking at the debt side and the interest rate, how it also impacts, when it comes to the national landscape. The South African Reserve Bank Monetary Policy Committee has kept the repo rate at 8.2%, where they actually had estimated it to actually to increase, but it didn't do so. During these tough times, colleagues, of all these constant increases in terms of cost of financing your debt, or the low economic growth, how does one tend to master their debt, with all these challenges, with all these interest hikes that we are seeing? Maybe I will start with Carrington here, maybe, to say, how does one, try to master, and how do they manage their debt during this time of where, to service your cost of financing, it's very much high with the interest rates that are going on, with the repo rates that have increased.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Leander. Thank you, everyone. So I can say I'm going to go with the basic way of understanding what is debt and how you can manage it. So first of all, the first thing that we really need to understand is debt. What is good debt and what is bad debt? That's the first principle that you should have an understanding on, right? Because debt can only be bad when it starts to cause what you call financial distress. Now you can't afford to pay it. So once you understand the good debt and the bad debt, so the bad debt, this is whereby you are financing for a liability, as an example. You are just financing, for example, luxury goods. You are just doing it for the sake of being part of the society, being part of the team that is doing whatever they are doing. Whereas a good debt, you are getting a debt that is going to give you a financial leverage. It's an asset. You're financing into an asset. So whenever you have that a debt in your portfolio, you have to identify which one is good and which one is bad. You need to get rid of the bad debt, because that debt is going to cause financial distress. So in doing so, you need to understand what we can say a gap. You have to have a view of what we call a gap. So what do I mean by a gap? What are you earning and what are you spending on? If your gap is a bit smaller, it's going to cause a lot of financial distress. If you earn less and you spend more, there is no way you are going to be able to pay your debt. So you have to be a person who is disciplined. You need to sit down, see your expenses, see your spending, see your income. Then that way it's going to easily help you to manage your debt. Right. Adding on to that, there's what we call saving for an emergency fund. Right. Most people, if we look as we speak these days, they just spend without saving for what we call an emergency fund. So what is an emergency fund? In case of an unfortunate event, you are going to see that you need some kind of an emergency fund that is going to help you to get out of that predicament. So the common mistake that people are doing these days, I know banks, they offer you this banking application where you can put your money in a 30-day notice. After those 30-day notice, you can take out that money. But in most cases, so I'm going to give an example of myself. I always have that 30-day notice or a savings account in the same bank, like a standard bank account. You have the check account, you have a 30-day notice or any other savings account. Let's say you finished all the money in the check account. Actually, your instinct will say, why don't you just take it from that day-to-day? Take a pen out of 100 Rand, it's not much. So if you develop that kind of a mentality of putting in the same account, you're not going to get the best out of it. So the best way that you can help yourself in order to manage your debt, right, especially when it comes to saving for emergency, put it in a separate account. There are so many banks that do offer those kind of savings. You can do it with Alan Gray, you can do it in Investec, you can do it with any other entities, but you should be in a point whereby you avoid putting your eggs in one basket. That's basically putting your eggs in one basket. You are having a same account with different accounts. When something happens that doesn't really need money, because you already see, because we are emotional beings, you can say that I have this money in the same account. Why don't I just take it? So when the real emergence comes, you're going to find yourself in a very awkward position where you cannot really manage your finances properly. So the first thing that I would encourage is to know what is good debt and what is bad debt. Bad debt is likely to cause you a financial distress, and it's actually going to acquire it enables you to acquire those what we call liabilities. For example, you cannot get a loan to finance your wedding. It's not going to generate income. But whereas someone can get a loan to start, for example, a business, you're going to leverage from it. You do your maths, you see, okay, if I get this 20,000 loan, okay, I'm going to start this particular business. What are the returns? Okay, I'm going to get this 20,000 loans. I want to throw a part. That's a financial liability. So in the end, how are you going to leverage from that? So getting an asset, financing an asset is going to give you a leverage, and always having what we call an emergency fund. But I would encourage everyone to save it into a separate account rather than same account. Put it somewhere where it's going to earn an interest that you can also leverage. So basically also on that one, I'm just finishing with this. There's what we call a credit check. Most mistakes that we make, especially when it comes to credit check, when I'm starting looking for an apartment or to buy a house, that's when I'm interested in knowing my credit score. That's not how it's supposed to be done. Check your credit score regularly so that you know I want to do something in 3 years' time, in 2 years' time. Start building your credit score. Start building your credit score daily. Look at it, update it. If something is not interesting in that particular, you can go to the bank. I'm seeing this particular item. How can I improve on this? Rather than doing things at the last minute. So always be up to date with your credit score. Thank you, Leander.
No, thank you so much, Mr. Garrington. And you've touched on 3 points that are great. Before I hand over to Bill, you've touched on, building on your credit, credit visibility with the banks. Start now. If you know that you want to invest for the next 3 years, you want to, acquire credit somewhere else, but you should start now instead of starting whenever you want to get that particular debt. You've also touched on emergency funds. where people should be putting in terms of emergency funds so that they can have that distress when it comes to financial burden. You've also touched on in terms of having different accounts where you can store money or store value of a particular money in different accounts. Those are crucial points in terms of the strategies on how one can build in terms of how they would manage their debt. Thank you so much for that. Maybe let me allow Tigelo on the same question, maybe in terms of what would be, his take in terms of how does one master debt during this recession time where, your repo rates are constantly growing up.
Perfect. Thanks, Leona. I think Carrington covered quite a bit of scope in terms of, good behavioral practices around managing debt, right? So I think maybe where one can add is to give an idea of the economic landscape around where we are currently with interest rates from a global perspective. So what people need to remember is that in terms of where we find ourselves, probably from the last, call it 2020, we had a pandemic where there was quite a lot of relief and stimulus that went into markets, right? And that's where you saw, people trying to encourage, rescuing people in negative positions, etc., including businesses. So what you saw is nations who typically, like, developed markets were negative interest rates. So that would be a situation where literally it meant when you give the bank money, um, they would charge you for your money. Essentially, you get like an interest rate of maybe negative 4-5%, whatever the case is. Post COVID, and I think going to, I guess the point that I'm alluding to here is a lot of times understanding debt is quite important because in as much as Carrington says that you need to understand using debt for constructive purposes, you also need to understand, even commercially, whatever that purpose is, its potential to outperform fluctuations in rates. So to give you this example now, post-COVID, what you found is that we went to an interest environment where interest rates literally halved within a matter of months, right? Post the pandemic, so the MPC dropped rate, to a very low point, and I'm sure you're aware. People then went out and purchased properties. People were, acquiring new debt. Banks also weren't really open to fixing interest rates at that time because I think they also saw that, it's not going to be a sustainable element in the cycle. And now that people have, with good intent, purchased properties, taken out finance for businesses, etc., etc. Also with the growing pressures that you find in South Africa now, where we've got energy challenges, a lot of people saw it as an opportunity to take debt, to gear up on their facilities, to gear up on their carry facilities, because we are at a business school. I'm sure there's people who run businesses. And then, a lot of people also were trying to get solar energy on their properties, to be more sustainable within the business environment as well as the commercial properties. But now what you've seen is that interest rates have since quickly ratcheted up from, where we started off in 2020. And this is where now you start to see the pressure. So people went from having, debt gearing facilities where there were 2 times of gearing. Now you find that they're at maybe positions of 5 to 7, which puts a strain on your balance sheet. It puts a strain on your liquidity and most importantly, the operational aspects of the business. The other aspect of it now that comes into play when you look at the infrastructural challenges that exist from a macroeconomic perspective, you also have interest rates increasing on the developed market front. So that's where you saw a very good example, a bank like the SVB, what was it, the technology bank, what was it called? The soft bank of, anyways, it was a whole fintech bank, tech bank, Silicon Valley Bank, that's what it was called, SVB. And SVB was in an environment where, without looking at maybe the balance sheet practices of liquidity analysis, they went and raised long-term debt, which is long duration debt, because the US and developed markets were in 0 to negative territories for the longest time. And what then happened is when these interest rates quickly went up, now you're sitting in a position where their long-term durated debt created a liquidity crunch in their local banks, and that's what caused the banks to collapse. A lot of the banks that you saw collapsing in the US or because of that. So it's just one anecdote, which is also relevant to the global economy. As a local player with interest rates raising in global economies, it also brings a big impact for you because your interest rates are driving further. South Africa's got a low inflation rate. A lot of emerging markets do, but they have to increase rates to keep up with the global economy rates because essentially they have to benchmark. Otherwise, we lose a lot of foreign direct investment. But now with the rates increases, it means that your currency increases. And if you're an importing business, it means that it's more expensive for you to purchase currency. So understanding debt is a critical part for any person, whether it be in your personal or in your business.
No, thank you so much, Tubelo. I think you've touched on from the global landscape and looking at the best practice as well in terms of we are not isolated as South African economy, but also working in terms of with other economies that are there from a global landscape, which that also impact how the cost of financing our debt. I think maybe to probe back on what Carrington Mlambo was indicating, where he was indicating on emergency funds. Similarly, we're looking at emergency funds and touching back from what people are saying that, back in 2020, back when there was a pandemic, we used to low interest rates there. If you look at the background, and now it's increasing and constantly increasing. And now people change their lifestyles, because borrowing, the cost of borrowing money was very low by then. They could purchase houses, they could purchase additional cars back then, but now it's no longer the case. And now people are seeing or feeling as if it's constantly increasing. To touch back and say, how does one, create an emergency fund, for all those many days? Maybe to touch back to you, Mr. Carrington, in terms of how does one create an emergency fund? Say, for example, they change their lifestyle. Like in 2020, where they were used to working from home, like to travel. There's now petrol money. The lifestyle is completely now changed back to money. How does one create that emergency fund from an individual perspective?
Okay, thank you, Liana. So I always get back to the basics. So the basics of economics, you have to see what are your needs and your wants. Because in most cases, what really take a chunk of our income is the wants rather than the needs. There are certain things that you can see these are unnecessary. For example, let's say you see that, okay, you are adding much more of your money, or you're taking much more of your money doing things like going out for restaurants on a regular basis. It's quite simple to simply cut off that type of behavior. You cut back on your going out for lunches or dinner. You need to take a look of those things that you can do without. That's the first step. What can I do without? And what are those things that I really need? And also in terms of, you gave a very good example of traveling, right? At one point, it depends. If your company is paying for you, for example, if it's paying for your petrol and whatever, then it's okay. But if it is not, you need to take a look which one is a better option for you to travel. Because I see a lot of people from my area, they do what I don't know, we call it transport stop for whatever it is. They can say maybe Monday to Wednesday, they just use one car, they are going into the same area. You are saving much more fuel, okay? Or else you can simply, instead of using your car, you can simply go on a train to travel. Those little things are going to add up, because people, they think that saving start by saving a big chunk. No, it's a character that needs to build on a daily basis. I'm going to save 50 rand, I'm going to save 100 rand. As you build that character of saving for that little things that you do daily, they are going to build up. And by the end of the year, you're going to see that you've installed a discipline of saving in yourself. You don't need to really start by saying, I want to go big. This month, I need to save half of my salary. It's going to a bit of drain you. Build a system, build a habit of saving, and cut those costs that you can see that no, these are totally irrelevant. As you do that, you're going to see you build a certain character within yourself, and you can simply save on your emergency fund. You don't need to start where you are, start with what you can. And also it comes back to that gap that I explained about, that what are you earning and what you are spending is narrow. You need to widen your gap. Whatever you spend should be far less than what you earn. If you spend less, you are going to create a gap, and that gap, that's the savings gap. Then you can save for your emergency fund. Thank you.
No, no, thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Carrington. Moving on to my next question. As we have indicated that the current repo rate is at what does this mean from an individual or from a national perspective? You know, what is the impact of the rapid increase in the repo rate from an individual perspective when it comes to managing debt? Maybe I'll direct this one to Steven Moravel.
Yes, sure, no worries. So the good news is that like our inflation obviously has actually shown its lowest level in probably the last 2 years. I think it's at 4.2% now. So you can anticipate that there would be some downward pressure. Inflation is dropping across the world, so we can anticipate a little bit of alleviation from that perspective in terms of where interest rates might be. But yeah, going more directly to your question is that if interest rates have sort of doubled in the past, couple of months since January, right? It would essentially mean that if you had a property that you were paying maybe an installment of, call it 12,000 Rand, you could now potentially be now paying installments of maybe close to 16, 17,000 Rand. This is also in tandem with the fact that because interest rates affect all businesses, it's what we call cost push inflation, right? So with the rising pressures, inflationary pressures, maybe from your agricultural producers, your fuel, your this, your that, it also means that not only is your bond going to increase, it means that there is going to be an increase in your fuel expense, the cost of getting food wherever you buy food. So your general parallel, in terms of what you call a parallel economy, which is unsubsidized, would be pushed by this. What Carrington talks about in terms of creating liquidity amongst or a buffer for emergencies is very important, right? But sometimes what we also need to have a look at is a conversation where we say, you can only save what you've made in terms of money, right? Or revenue, whatever the case is. And if you're not generating revenue, you don't have anything to save, right? So I also say that in as much as fiscal discipline is a very good habit and behavior, whether it's 500 Rand a month or whether it's 10,000 Rand a month or 100,000 Rand a month that you're putting away, or 10 million Rand, whatever the case it is, it's a good discipline to have. But you also have to form a discipline around how you generate income. For different people, it varies. Different people have different gifts. Maybe Luanda and Carrington, maybe you guys are good at playing instruments. Maybe you start a band and you start spending your weekends, performing in places, or maybe you start a business that does something that you've got an expertise in and you think that you can generate income of, where you spend your extra time. So maybe it might look like in as much as you're saving money, yes, but you can also save time. In as much as you're saying cut down on restaurants, you can maybe also cut down on, I don't know, reality TV, if it's something that takes up a lot of your time, or, spending time at a Chisanyama, if that's what takes up your time, and saying, how can I rechannel my time to maybe upskill myself, like a lot of your participants on this call are doing right now, because then maybe once they've upskilled themselves, they can then apply for a new job, get a promotion, and increase the amount that they earn. So the one last thing also is your keeping money in cash versus investing money is also another big thing, because your interest income on revenue, your interest income is taxed heavily. It's taxed according to your marginal. Whereas if you've got that pay dividends and equity related, then you tax lower on those. So you get the tax dividend withholding tax when you've got dividend paying instruments, and then you also get, capital gains tax when you sell on equity. So it's a small tax arbitrage which can make you more efficient around how you grow, just outperforming inflation and trying to stay ahead from a earnings perspective and equity participation perspective is very important.
Thank you so much. Apologies, colleagues or the audience, when you're seeing a bit of technical glitch, then there it could be network and so on. And sounds, technical glitches there. But maybe carrying on, thank you so much for touching, in terms of from an individual perspective, where it's scary so much, where somebody could have been paying 12,000, now they end up seeing themselves paying 6,000, due to the, hikes when it comes to the repo rate and the interest rate. It's so scary from an individual perspective. But I need to touch on the national perspective. What does it mean with all these increases? How does it impact the borrowing? And, will the financial institutions have that appetite, in terms of lending? If we're all constantly having these increases, from the repo rate, because understanding so that, the repo rate is actually impacting how you as an individual, you will be able to finance that debt, or the funding that you got. Maybe let's say from capital side, in terms of what is the appetite or willingness from the financial institutions, which is like your banks and your other borrowing institutions. What is the appetite when using repo rates?
About how the income is generated. You talked about upskilling yourself. Proof of point, that's what is very important, because you cannot sell what you do not have. So firstly, getting a skill and a state that you need to invest any time. You can save your time, upgrade yourself, do any skill. And you can see that these days there are so many platforms that you can learn new skills that you can easily apply yourself, and you can get more income. Because if you see the 2021 commercial things. I'm not sure if I say unfortunately, it is passed to the consumers. So the end person, is actually a consumer going to pay that burden. Okay, when they increase from 7 to 8, it's simply passed to the consumer. So when that happens, it means the borrowing cost is actually high for everyone. And it's just everything. I'll just give a simplified example for business. If a business is funded by the loan and it's actually not a fixed, it's a flexible interest. So it means when the rate changes, obviously the interest that that particular business has to pay increases. So when it increases, it means the cost of borrowing has increased. If they were paying, for example, 1 million rands per month on interest, it has increased. Maybe they are paying now 1.2 million. So it simply means their cost, if it is a manufacturing end, it has to be transferred to the end consumers. Hence the products, whatever it is, the cost of manufacturing that particular product has to increase. So the cost goes back to the consumer, right? But on the other hand, if you're an investor, it can be a good sign. You're going to add high interest as an investor, right? But overall, to the consumers, the interest rate is going to be passed on to you. That's why that example of what mortgage loans where you were paying 12,000 now you're paying 16,000. That interest rate has simply been passed to you as an individual. So that's where now you as an individual, how are you going to bridge that gap? Right? Same thing that was said, do your homework, upgrade your skills, and more in order to cover for those gaps. But basically, the interest is passed to the consumer, and the consumer is to be at the better. But as well, this at a national level, the reason for the repo rates, I think we all read from the news that whenever they're increasing these repo rates, they're trying to reduce the inflation rate, because we know if prices persistently decrease, we're actually devaluing the value of our rand. So in order to keep that, the Reserve Bank has always to regulate the market. That's its responsibility. Regulate so that the inflation, that it just doesn't shoot off the roof. So you have to regulate those prices so that we keep them at a particular level, right? Because wherever, when rand becomes bigger, when everything goes expensive in matter of hours, I think we know examples of countries like Zimbabwe where inflation just skyrocketed today, tomorrow the prices of bread is 1,000 bond, tomorrow it comes 5,000 bond. It devalues what we call the value of the money, and it redistributes the wealth. The one who had already made some purchases today is going to benefit. Let's say he bought the resources today, then the person who is supposed to buy tomorrow is going to be affected. So there's going to be a high redistribution of wealth. There will be gainers and there will be losers. So we need to put a balance on that, and that's the main responsibility of the Reserve Bank in terms of the monetary policy. But all in all, in terms of the nationality, the fiscal policy, the monetary policy alone does not really work alone. It has to follow the fiscal policy in order to regulate whatever that is happening in the economy.
No,
okay,
thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Covington. And it's lovely that, we need to reskill ourselves so that we can earn more. As we are an education institution, we are all about that, constantly and continuously developing yourself. And I'll move on now, and I want to talk about the debt temporary reliefs and other thing. Constantly, if as an individual you're struggling, paying off your debt, I think banks normally advise that reach out to them first before you can go to any other place. They would normally advise that come to us first, talk to us, so that we can have like a temporary debt relief for you in terms of the strategies that they have when it comes to debt relief, temporary debt reliefs. So how does this work, from an individual, how does it impact them, and how does it impact their credit score? Does it have a credit score impact, those particular reliefs? That maybe after a year, after I've been in part of this program of a temporary debt relief, does it impact my credit score, when I want to now go and maybe want to finance my house, or I want to go and finance my car and so forth? What is the impact on the credit score with these debt relief programs? Any take on that? Yeah, given I can go ahead.
So look, I'm not an expert on credit ratings, and yeah, I don't really know how it essentially works around, like restructuring the debt and all of that, right? So, the key thing is your serviceability, and I'm just talking with my experience, with the private bankers. Obviously, it's a different division to that one where I am, but I've got experience with working with them. But serviceability is crucial, right? So which is where we're talking about that. Whatever you intend to do with debt has to have a clear side of serviceability, right? So if it's a business, you need to have elements of confidence that you will be able to service that debt. And when interest rates increase, you must remember that like Harrington alluded to earlier, it not only impacts you as an individual, but it impacts business increasing. You heard the recommendations: don't eat out. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Yeah, back. We're listening.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, you heard the recommendations. Where they're saying when interest rates go up, the recommendations are that you should cut costs, don't eat out as much, which when you're a business owner, essentially what it means is that they're cutting you, right? So you need to also have a stress testing around your business model when you take on debt, because when you're conservative with debt and you use it maybe purely for functional elements of your business. To give you an example, right? If you are maybe a manufacturer and you import your materials from a particular country, right? Most banks would have maybe a trade finance division where they would be able to say, all right, so we can finance your inventory, right? So they'll give you terms on your inventory and it maybe allows you to keep liquidity, but you know that your sales, maybe you've got off-take agreements or whatever the case is. Let's say you manufacture this water or whatever, you've got off-take agreements that the University of whatever, Regenera's want to purchase 1,000 bottles of water from you, whatever, I don't know the numbers. And then okay, if I import these bottles and I fill them, Regenesis would pay me back in 30 days. So I'm taking an inventory finance for 30 days because I know that by the time Regenesis pays me for this bottle of water, it would be the time when my financing is due and I've made enough to cover whatever eventualities there are on interest. So I think that's how deep you need to dive in terms of how functional is the debt that you're looking to take on. It can gear your business and it can grow your business exponentially and quicker than if you were to just be a bank to yourself. But at the same time, you have to be cautious about how you utilize.
No, thanks. Maybe let me then touch on the question directed now to Carrington. Carrington, often we see people moving, their debt financing, just for them to be able to, cap on their reduction of that interest rate. You'd find like, you have Mr. A and you have, Mrs. B. And what they would now do is whenever they're in distress of finances or they're struggling financially, they would move their home loan or their car loan to another banker, which is offering them maybe a reduced interest rate. Do you maybe recommend that maybe it could be a best strategy for one to move around in terms of hopping around different interest rates? Does it make a difference when it comes to them trying to manage their debt?
Okay, thanks, Leander. My answer to this question is not going to be direct. It can be a yes or a no. Right. So when it comes to move your home loan, right? For example, you had a home loan with Bank A. Maybe you're paying 10%. That the interest was at 10%. Then someone comes to you and say, okay, if you are struggling, I'm a client for Bank B, right? And they're going to charge you 9% for your home loan. Then you decide, okay, let me jump to Bank B. Right. So your interest, especially when it comes to bank, the interest that you pay, it differs from each individual depending on your credit ratings. So first of all, you need to find your credit score. Okay, your credit rating, how much you're going to qualify for that, what kind of interest. And also on that, especially when you're switching banks for your home loan, you're going to see that there's a lot of legal costs that are involved. So you need to factor into account, okay, if I'm going to move from bank A to bank B, I'm going to save 50,000, but my legal cost is going to cost me 60,000. So there's no benefit in doing that because all the interest is going to the legal cost, initiation fees and all that. So you need to do a proper calculation. That is that 0.5% that I'm trying to avoid worth it in terms of the other costs that are involved in order in changing that. When you do your maths, you can really see whether it's worth it or it's not. So it depends on a lot of factors. The interest rate that you're going to receive from that particular other bank when you do your home loan, when you switch for your home loan. In this particular case, there is no transfer duty because it's simply the same house. So, but there are other legal costs that are involved. So once you weigh your options to say, okay, I'm avoiding the 0.5%. So what will be the legal cost? What are other costs involved? Because you are later going to see that, okay, even if I avoid the 0.5%, but the overall cost that I'm going to pay on legal costs is actually supersedes the benefit. So there is no benefit in doing that. And also you need to check the trends, particular, home loans, normally the interest is flexible. So when that interest change, that particular bank that you are actually joining now, when they change their interest rate, how do they change compared to the repo rate? How do they increase it? Because you find that you are skipping from the 10% when the repo rate changes. How are they going to be increasing that interest rate compared to the factors that you should take into account before you make that move, so that at the end you're not going to make losses? Because once you jump to this bank, you realize that's not it. You acquire more legal costs to go back to the previous bank. So there are a lot of factors that you should take into consideration before you move. But for others, it is quite beneficial, especially if the interest is 1% or more. You are likely to cost on your mortgage by maybe 100,000 in those 15 years. Yeah, but for others, it's going to be eroded by the legal fees, so it won't be worth it. But for others, it's worth it. That's what I can say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Garantino. And I'm glad that you touched on different things that could impact, like your legal cost of you moving your debt or opening, just because of all this, only to address the interest rates. Maybe you want to have the cheapest one. Maybe, Robert, do you have maybe a different perspective or maybe a contribution? What's your take on the debt?
Yeah, so I would agree. Debt, especially on large assets, it's a big consideration. A change on 1% on a property, maybe that's like 3 million rand of interest, can be a significant amount of money in the overall period, right? The cost of transferring, you always need to consider frictional costs. Even like with property, when you buy a property and you're selling property, I think people often don't consider the actual costs of achieving this. The other big thing that can be of great assistance would be the private banking. Private banking, I mean, a lot of people here qualify for private banking, if not all, if they're at master's level. And if you were to be within private banking, wherever you are, whether it's with an Investec, if you qualify for it, or a net bank or an ABSA, or Standard Bank, FNB, whatever the case is. Because they compete, it's quite competitive on the lend, because then they lend out at prime rates. Or they lend out at prime less rates. Right? So always be fixed at a prime less one, or whatever the case is, or you'd always be fixed at a prime on whatever you qualify for. So private banking is a good thing to consider, because it will save you a lot of money on debt repayment.
No, thank you so much, Tibula. Thank you so much for the insight when it comes to private banking, where people also opt in terms of, maybe considering private banking whenever they're taking their huge assets loans, especially when it comes to like your home loans and so forth. Maybe let's look at the government role now when it comes to, debt management. Do you guys know of any, maybe are there any government programs that are there, or government initiatives, or even if it's not government, maybe from a business roles or from the financial institution roles as well, when it comes to now debt management? Do they have any programs, any initiatives that they have to aid individuals with their debt, or maybe to even educate them when it comes to debt management? Do you guys know of any initiatives that, banks, government, and other role players or stakeholders that they do have in terms of engaging individuals when it comes to debt management? Let me take Carrington.
Thank you. I'm not sure much about it, but I know that the government also have what we call the debt relief bill, whereby it tries to help individuals and businesses, especially in instances like what happened during the pandemic, right? It can also be in a position to assist to say what can be done. They can discuss with the business and the individuals so that they can be a kind of a relief. I think during COVID, we all heard what the government was trying to implement to say people, they could put a break on debt repayment. That's government being involved, trying to help people. That's what I'm aware of about the debt relief bill that was set by government. So yeah, it is there. That's what I can say. Thank you.
No, thanks, Karan. No, thanks, Carrington. No, thanks, Carrington. Maybe Tibelo, coming from a background of, from a banking space, from Investec, maybe do you know of any, programs or initiatives to educate, individuals when it comes to debt management? I think we might have lost Tibelo there. Okay, apologies for Tibelo. Maybe as we might have lost him due to maybe network and technical glitches. Probably we'll then move on to the next question while we wait for him to reboot his network. Let's look at when it comes to debt management strategies. Our top economists have sounded the alarm that it's time to streamline our financial, strategies and tightening the belt. And what are the immediate cutting edge tools or insights that you can give away when it comes to debt management? What are the strategies that are there? What are tools that people can use when it comes to debt management? Maybe Mr. Carrington, while we wait on Pinello.
Okay, yeah, there are plenty these days, especially in the era of technology. If you just go on Google, I know Old Mutual, they do have a tool on their platform where if you just debt management tools, Alexander Forbes, they also do have Alan Gray. There are a lot, even banks, they do have those tools. So what I would encourage you is just use different types of tools. Just Google those ones, examples that I gave. That's the first easier one that you can simply implement from the comfort of your home. You can list all your debts, whatever, whether you want to do a debt consolidation, whatever it is, just go on those platforms. They do offer you very good tools that you can use in order to manage your debt. And also the other way is just to go to a financial advisor. There are a lot of companies that do offer those things, which I would recommend if you really need kind of help and you're not maybe good in using those online tools so that they can really structure things. Maybe there is a cost, of course, involved, but it's worth it so that you can really restructure your things and know what you owe and how you're going to overcome your debt. So there are so many blend of tools from the banking apps to other investment bankings and things like Old Mutual. They do offer a lot of tools that you can use. If you just go on the Google, just saying debt management tools, Old Mutual, it will come up, Alexander Forbes, Alan Gray, all those are going to really assist you. Even, I know, I'll just give another example, especially people who want to do tax returns, because you find that people at the end of the year when they do their tax returns, they will see that, oh, they are owing 20,000, which will later even put more burden on you. There are so many tools, especially I use the Old Mutual one. It gives you a platform where you can put all your amount that you earned and simply calculate what you owe to SARS or whatever it is. So these tools are freely available to begin with. Then later, if you really need something professional, you can go to financial advisors for different institutes. They are going to help you to structure your debt.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, thank you so much, Mr. Carrington. Glad to also say that Mr. Tibelo is back.
Yeah.
Mr. Tibelo, can you hear us now? Are you back? Mr. Tibelo? Okay, I think we might have lost you when it comes to sound, Mr. Tibelo. We're not hearing you from our side.
Sorry.
Yeah. Can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, but there is a bit of a
Yeah,
lag.
sorry, I was just trying to switch the connectivity because think the Zoom, I don't think the Zoom is, but I think that should be okay now.
Okay, okay, perfect. Yeah, no, we just touched on tools the other day when it comes to assisting individuals, whereas individuals when it comes to financial strategies, in terms of tightening their belt. But maybe let's move on to our very last question. you know, we understandably saw that Mr. Carrington has shared in terms of the technological tools that are there on the websites that people can use. I want to look at the immediate ones that people could have access to when it comes to now your budgeting and so forth, because understandably so that for you to be able to manage your debt, you should be able to manage your expenses, you should have a budget. And I think the theme of today, we were talking about, the income that you have, try to make sure that you don't spend it that much on things that you want, but spend it more on your needs. What are the technological tools that people would have currently at their disposal that they can use, maybe say for example, your Excels, maybe on the cell phone that people can use when it comes to budgeting as well as managing their expenses. Maybe Mr. Tibelo, if I can direct this question to you.
Yeah, no, definitely, yeah. So I'd love to take that one. I'm a big fan of tech, like I said. So I mean, there's various platforms that are budget management, for example, tools. I think Core Mutual has one. There's quite a few that you can utilize out there to try and categorize your expenses, and then it gives you a very clear view. Um, that's conventional budgeting. There's a cash flow budgeting technique that I personally utilize from Robert Kiyosaki. Obviously, I'm sure a lot of people have read his book, which is the Rich Dad Poor Dad, which talks closer to how you flow from liabilities to assets to expenses and back into assets, and growing your asset base so that and reducing your liability base so that your asset base pays more and your liability base is less, which means that you've got more to reinvest into assets and grow the asset base. Um, another interesting platform. So I'm one of the founders of a platform called Community, and it's actually quite a nice way for joint savings because on the Community platform, it's a fintech. You're able to set up group savings clubs. So, for example, on my Community app, my wife and I have a portion on that where we set up different, call it stock funds. So we have a savings club where it's me and her for furniture that we want to buy. We have a savings club for trips that we want to take. We have savings clubs for our kids, maybe want to do something for our kids like a birthday party. So it really helps to compartmentalize your expenses from that part. So yeah, you can really leverage on tech because the one thing about savings and managing your finances, it's really behavioral. So once you can visualize things and you can see, oh my goodness, I spend maybe 10,000 Rand on food a month, or then you realize like, oh my goodness, that's actually excessive. And then you can target it as to when you're just doing it, free flow. You can't really see. You're just thinking, oh, my money's going and I don't know where it's going. So yeah, there's things that can make it much more graphic to you.
Yeah, no, thank you, Mr. Rabelele. Colleagues, just before I let you go, just one question for us to concluding it. From your expert insights, how can we educate individuals on debt management? Maybe I can direct this particular question to Mr. Carrington. From your own insights, from your own background in terms of being in industry within the finance space as well as being from academia, how can we educate or how can we reach the entire nation when it comes to educating them with debt management?
Okay, thank you. So me, I'll just give an example. I was a person who really didn't like that until at one point I had to apply for an apartment, and I said, "You don't have a credit score, you can't get." So I think this should start from a family setup, whereby as parents, if we are parents or we are not yet parents, but from a family setup, you need to really educate your children that this is debt, good debt, and you should get it because it's going to give you a credit score, which is going to help you in future. So this should always start from a family setup, whereby parents are responsible in educating their children about debt and how it can help them in future. And also from school perspective, I know that schools, they should be, I believe there should be some curriculums at school that actually teach all these basic things in life, because sometimes we are not afforded all these. We only learn them after university that, oh, I need a good credit score. And what you all know is that your parents didn't have a good credit score, but they never told you, like, why don't I have a good credit score? So I think these things should always come from the family setup, that we really need to educate our children. And also we as individuals, whether we are still first year, second year, try to read widely. Read widely. Read as much as you can. Get the knowledge from those who have walked the walk. Learn from them, and always help others whenever necessary, whenever you see an opportunity. Please spread the word. Help them with whatever that you have that you think is going to help them to leverage from the debt, whatever it is. Always communicate. I think that is going to help a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. Mr. Tibela, your question, just 30 seconds.
Yeah, sorry, I was actually just trying to respond to the question there. I think someone asked, where do you access the community platform? So community is community with a K, so it's KOMUNITI. And you can access it on iOS on the App Store, and then you can also access it on Android, which is the Play Store, and then the Huawei app. So I'll just put the typing or the spelling of the app, just so that you can access it whenever. But yeah, so in terms of then the parting remarks, I think information is everything, right? So podcasts, you are what you eat, right? So you are what you consume in general. So I remember when I was young, probably from the tender age of 10, my father was in finance. So like like Huntington was saying, it starts at home. So with my father being in finance, we used to read the finance part of Sunday Times and never the gossip column. It's just one of those examples. And it just gave me a whole lot of, learnings around, the financial world, the equity markets, the stock market, all these funds, that exist, and, how to navigate, all of that, how to leverage that positively, business as well. Because reading those things, you're learning about how people run their businesses. And then about business as a collective, I think as communities, we probably don't do that enough. But the more and more we share our experiences and we share our stories, the more there's learnings to be shared amongst us. But yeah, reading, business TV, there's another section on TV there, after the sports channels. It's like your CNBC Africa's, it's your Bloomberg's, there's your Business Day and all of that, which can be very helpful as well with addressing a whole lot of these, these phenomena.
No, thank you so much. Thank you so much, our distinguished guest. Thank you so much to the audience as well. Thank you guys for coming through. We truly appreciate you, and thank you so much for your insights. I think it really starts at the lower ages with your parents and colleagues. You might be parents yourselves or would be in future. I think the debt management will then start with you. It means it's your job first before anybody else can start, in terms of teaching your kids or your, close families and friends. It will need to start with you when it comes to the management education. Thank you so much, colleagues. Thank you for joining us. We truly appreciate your insight. We truly appreciate your expertise and your experience. around this particular topic that we're having. Our next webinar will be on the 28th of September 2023, and the topic will be around building, really building adaptability and building agility when it comes to the modern working environment that we see ourselves with the new digital age. How does one build that, adaptability? How do they quickly adapt? Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us. See you next time.
Sure. All the best, everyone. Take care.
Okay, thank you. Bye.